today, 215 unknown and inexplicable events from the standpoint of UFO. And this is important because it's an admission that the phenomenon exists, of course. Their present approach is to handle the problem with a certain care, but not to deny it. This is extremely positive. Probably they prefer that other people may find the right clue to explain the problem. And it's what we are trying to do, of course, on a volunteer basis, of course, but it is so. Another interesting thing is that recently we could check some old documents. They are documents from the 30s. And these documents are linked mainly to sightings in 1936, and they show that even the fascist government at that moment was handling with the problem of UFOs. The story is this: we received from an anonymous source these documents and had the problem of checking everything from the standpoint of history, of documents, and above all, we had to have these documents analyzed from a chemical and historical point of view. The result was positive, completely positive. In fact, we gave also these documents to the Italian Air Force in order to have also their opinion and to see if they knew nothing more about this. The answer was that they know nothing more, but in any case, yes, the documents are authentic. The conclusion was that during the 30s, Italy was involved with the sightings of unknown aircrafts. And at that moment, Mussolini was very embarrassed and really had problems because the idea that the Italian power in the air, because the Italian Air Force was really very, very important at that moment, this could even lead him to change his foreign politics, of course, because he feared that these unknown aircrafts might be English or French, of course, but they were not, obviously. By the way, there are cases of elongated objects, like we see in the UFO cases today, expelling lesser unidentified flying objects in the form of the classical flying saucer. And this sighting, for instance, occurred in the sky of Venice, and we had two fighters of the Royal Italian Air Force at the time who tried to intercept the objects, in vain, of course. So, in other words, there is nothing new under the sun. But this is important because it proves what we always thought. That is, that the UFO sightings began much before 1947 and everywhere, of course. In 1978, we obtained for the first time an official dossier of Italian Air Force documents. We requested them according a certain definite procedure. It was not easy, but at last we obtained them. From the standpoint of the nature of the sightings, the Air Force documents show that we are facing definite objects, that these objects are detected by radar, and that military pilots had encounters in the skies of Italy exactly like elsewhere. And when the Italian Air Force says that they have 215 cases still unexplained, means that they are UFO sightings which have unknown characteristics. For instance, there are cases of jet military planes intercepting these objects in the skies of Italy. And normally these objects go away without the possibility of being intercepted. All this, if we had also the problem of traces, for instance. There are also...
By this you mean landing?
Yeah, landing traces. And all this, this is a very delicate subject because just a few admissions are made by the military about this. But if we consider that even their forms, their blank forms about the UFO subjects show a lot of parameters which are really defined at the very minimum extent, you understand that what is written there is surely part of the cases they faced, because otherwise they never would have put such details on the forms. So sometimes the documents speak for themselves. First time we succeeded in half a century to have as guest an official delegation of the Italian Air Force which came to our UFO Congress with other 16 foreign delegates to speak officially and in uniform about the UFO problem. The speaker was General Olivero. At that time he was still a colonel, but now he's a general, and he is the chief of the intelligence office of the Italian Air Force, which is charged also to follow the UFO cases, of course. Colonel Olivero was sufficiently careful in saying certain things and not saying certain other things. But what is important that he said that the problem exists, that the Italian force is handling this difficult thing since 1978, that they have on file at least 215 UFO cases, that they are still controlling the Italian airspace in order to control the situation from the standpoint of UFO, and that really there are inexplicable cases. Besides, he was also asked officially by the press what he thought on a personal basis, and he said that as a pilot, since he is a pilot, he had known and he knew and he knows serious colleagues, serious pilots who really had encounters with UFOs, and he said, I trust them. In the 90s, we had two different cases in Italy. They both occurred in Campania. Campania is the region near Naples. And we had two different landings. And the landing traces left by these two different objects were analyzed in a laboratory by our experts. And we got certain results. That is, we discovered that the objects, after their landing, had really bombed the surface of the soil with microwaves and with high intensity, high frequency microwaves. We could check and define this effect. So we could compare and confirm in this way the world famous case of Trans-en-Provence in France, which occurred in 1981 and which is a classic from this point of view. It was very important because when we went to Toulouse and we confronted the data, we saw that the effects were very similar, and this was very, very important. We had good relationships with the French, even if they are a governmental body, of course, and our organization is a private one. Mr. Velasco is the head of the governmental body who studies the UFO problem in France. This is important.
What has he concluded? Do they think this is real or fictitious?
Excuse me?
Do they think that the phenomenon is real or fictitious?
No. The approach of Velasco is extremely positive. They think that the problem is real, that we are confronting a real phenomenon, a technological phenomenon of unknown nature. The position of the French is extremely open and extremely realistic. The possibilities of UFOs are much superior than we think. Really, probably it's hard to say that unidentified flying objects fly. What does it mean, fly? A plane flies because it has a sort of importance, but probably UFOs use another kind of propulsion, and for them it's absolutely the same to proceed in a fluid like water or an atmosphere like ours, or the atmosphere of another planet, or even the vacuum, the void. So it's a quite different kind of propulsion, and even the cases in our seas show this. We had a lot of cases of pilots in Italy, both civilians and military, who really had these encounters. For instance, in 1973, we had a very famous case. 3 planes were involved over the airport of Turin, and at present one of these 3 pilots is still alive. In fact, we succeeded in having him as a guest in the San Marino Symposium. This man, the name is Tranquillo, and was one of the pilots of the 3 planes involved. We had a sighting from 3 different planes and from the tower of the Turin airport. Besides, the object was also on the radar screens, so it's very important. After this object took off and went toward France, and so the story was over. But all the Italian newspapers mentioned this case because the witnesses were not only the pilots but also a lot of people on the ground. Something like a flying luminous egg, something like that. Another important case was the case of a general. Now he is no longer in the Air Force because General Salvatore Marcelletti in 1976, yes, when he was the chief of the flight school of the Italian Air Force in Lecce, happened to meet a tremendous object. Imagine he was flying and he could suddenly, he suddenly saw a green light over him. He just raised the eyes towards the high and saw an incredible line, a curved line, green, of a big compact object over the cockpit. And he understood that something enormous, huge, was over the plane. He didn't know what to do. Seconds later, minutes later, he still doesn't know how long this experience lasted. He saw suddenly this mass took off with a tremendous speed. He didn't check this object on the radar screen, asked without mentioning this sighting to the tower if they had anything strange on their radar screen. They hadn't. but he saw this. And in fact, only when he left the Italian Air Force, he, of course, mentioned this event. If we consider from a statistical point of view all the cases we are facing, surely I think that a good half of these cases may have some different origins, but a good half is surely linked to a technological phenomenon of unknown nature and of unknown technology. If we have to try to explain all this in practical terms, I think that still the extraterrestrial hypothesis is the hypothesis which is able to explain more than any other hypothesis what's going on. Besides, if we consider that the UFO cases can and must be compared, we still see definite patterns in these cases. And this is extremely important, because this means that the UFO cases have a sort of have their own rules, their own particular characteristics, their own patterns. And if you see that these patterns lead us to think that unknown beings, humanoid in form, and of unknown origin, are visiting us much before than 1946, I think that really the only possible explanation is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. From a logical point of view, I don't think that we have nothing to fear, because if we would face hostile beings, well, surely they would have conquered us or made incredible things in the past. They could, really. If this didn't happen, surely it's because we have nothing to fear. I think I don't say nothing new saying that probably there is in every part of the world, probably with invisible links, a definite invisible college, we may call it so, even if this expression was used in a different sense by Joseph Allen Hynek, which is facing this subject from the standpoint of research secretly, in order to have gains and technologies to be applied in a quite different approach. Because the problem is that people don't understand a very important thing. The UFO problem is not only a scientific problem, it is also an intelligence problem. This is the second important phase of the UFO reality. And we when we begin to understand this, we may understand a lot of things, because all this has to do with power. Power everywhere, in every country, with every government, with every situation.
Don't worry about it, folks. He said that's all spotlights. Well, being an idiot like me, I jump and I said, Colonel, I said, what do you mean spotlights? There's no clouds. There's no beam of light coming from any place, and you're telling us it's spotlights? And he told me to shut up. And just then a bird colonel jumps up, and he said, I knew the bird colonel, that's why I knew he was bird colonel. His name was Miller. He jumps up, he says, Colonel, he said, you shut up.